A warm welcome to one and all. Myself Kavyasritha, and I have started this initiative to teach or discuss all the units in CSIR-NET Life Sciences syllabus from Unit 1 to Unit 13 for the upcoming September session exam. So I hope it is useful to many of you. So firstly, we'll discuss the structure of atoms, molecules, and also the chemical bonds which are present over here. So atom, as we know, is the smallest unit of matter. It is that unit of matter which is not divisible anymore. So it is the finest particle. An atom consists of a nucleus, and that nucleus comprises of protons plus neutrons. And apart from this, it also contains the electrons. The electrons continuously revolve around the nucleus in a spherical shape. So as we can see, the electrons are negatively charged and the protons are positively charged, whereas neutrons carry no particular charge. So the charge on electrons and protons is similar, 1.602 into 10 power minus 19, but we have to make a note about the positive and the negative charges. And the charge on the neutron is almost negligible, it's zero. And when we look at the mass, so as we have dealt with the charge, now we look at the mass. The mass of protons and neutrons is equal. These two are equal, but the electrons is not. It is negligibly considered, so we can consider it as zero. So this one we also consider it in AMU. So the mass can also be taken in AMU, that is atomic mass units, and in that way the protons are approximately 1 atomic mass unit. The neutrons, because they are equally as weight as proton, they are also 1, and the electrons are approximately 0. So when we consider the mass, proton and neutron are equal, and when we consider the charge, proton and electron are equal only with the number, but they are denoted by opposite signs. And we also make a note that the number of protons and number of electrons is equal, and that will make an atom neutral. So suppose if you take helium as an example, we see that helium is having 2 protons plus 2 electrons, and that is why it is a neutral atom. And if we see lithium is having 3 protons plus 3 electrons, but it is not stable, and to attain a stable configuration, lithium tends to lose 1 electron, and when it loses 1 electron, it is having 3 protons plus 2 electrons. Hence it gains a positive charge of +1, because proton is 1 exceeding than electron, hence it's Li plus, and therefore it is referred to as cation. That means it is an ion. So ions are of 2 types, one is cation and the other one is anion. Anions are negatively charged and cations are positively charged. An atom becomes a cation when it loses an electron, and an atom becomes an anion when it gains an electron. So example of anion can be fluorine. Fluorine gains 1 electron to attain the octet configuration. Next, the atoms are also classified based on number of protons and number of neutrons in the nucleus. And number of protons will determine the identity of an atom. So if it is 6 protons, then it is carbon. But if it is 7 protons, then it becomes nitrogen. So protons are determining the identity of an atom. And isotope is another important definition. Isotope is a varied number of neutrons and the protons remain constant. So now we look at the example of the isotopes of hydrogen. If you look over here, as we have known that the symbol is X. X is an element, and A and Z. So A represents the mass number and Z represents the atomic number. So mass is a combination of protons plus neutrons, and atomic number is a combination, it's not a combination, it's just protons. So when we look at protium, we see that number of protons is equal to 1 and protons plus neutrons is equal to 1. That means number of neutrons is 0. And in the second example, that is the second isotope of hydrogen, you see that proton is 1, here also proton is 1. But proton plus neutron is equal to 2, that is neutron is 1 in number. Here proton plus neutron is equal to 3, that is over here neutron is 2 in number. This is 1 in number, this is 0. So 1 proton plus 0 neutron is 1 mass of this hydrogen, and 1 proton plus 1 neutron will make it 2, that is mass of this deuterium, and tritium is 1 proton plus 2 neutron, that is 3 tritium. So this is how the isotopes are existing, and isotopes generally exist because of the number of neutrons which is increasing. Next, when we look at the natural isotopes of carbon, we see the same example. Protons are remaining the same, whereas neutrons are increasing by 1 number in each example. So there are 3 naturally occurring isotopes of carbon, and we can look at the abundance. If you have ever wondered, in the periodic table chart, when we see this element carbon, we see that the atomic mass is 12.011. So why are there some decimal numbers? Why can't it just be 12? It is because of the varied abundance of the carbon. If you can see, the abundance is 98 of this particular isotope, and second isotope carbon 13 is 1.109, and the third isotope is 1 part per trillion. So there is a simple calculation for this. For carbon 12, we see that the abundance is 98.89%, right? So we take it as 12 into 98.89% is divided by 100 plus the second one. So the abundance is 1.109 into 13 divided by 100. And we have to consider this also. When we calculate this sum, we get approximately 12.011. And that is why the combined mass of this carbon is given as 12.011, and that is why whenever we see in the periodic table, we see such decimal places. Now we will discuss about the periodic table of the elements. So namely, we have periods. So this is first period, second period, third period, fourth, and so on. We have 7 periods. So periods are like this and groups are like this from left to right. From left to right as we go, it's group number 1, 2, 3, that is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, 14, 15, and so on. So if you see, this is the these are S block elements, this is P block elements, this is T block elements, all the yellow ones, and these two are F block elements. So so we see that these are metals generally. These are metalloids. The one which are in varied color, this is metalloids, and the other ones over here, these are non-metals, and these are gases. So now we will discuss about 2 concepts here. First one is ionization enthalpy, and the second one is electronegativity. So ionization enthalpy is the energy which is required to remove an electron from the outermost orbital. So if you look at francium, francium is having 7 orbitals. If this is the nucleus, and it is having 7 orbitals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. As we see, sorry, it should all be in circle, but if you see from the nucleus, the distance of the orbital is increasing, and the outermost electron is having less force, and hence it can easily be removed. So ionization enthalpy is low. The energy which is required to remove an outermost electron from an outermost orbital is the ionization enthalpy. Hence ionization enthalpy for francium is low, but it is quite high for helium, because helium has only 1 orbital and there is 2 electrons, so it is tightly bound, hence we cannot remove it. It requires highest ionization enthalpy. Now nextly, if we look at the electronegativity is the force which is there between the nucleus and the electrons. If you see, the force is very less, hence the proton cannot attract the electron to be with it. Hence the electron can easily be removed. Hence electronegativity is low. As we go down the group, we see that the electronegativity decreases, and as we go from left to right, the electronegativity increases. Electronegativity increases because over here in a single period there are no more addition of orbitals. If there is, so here it is only one orbital, here there are two orbitals. In the third period there are three orbitals. In the fourth there are four orbitals. So when we look at this consideration, because as we go down, the distance between the protons, that is nucleus, and the electrons is increasing, electronegativity will be low. But as we go here, it will be one electron. Now it will be two electron. Over here with two orbitals, it will be three electrons. Over here it will be four valence electrons. So as we go, the force keeps on increasing. It is very hard for us to remove an electron from the outermost shell. Hence electronegativity increases. And over here we can also notice one thing, that is, as we are going from left to right, the size is decreasing. Size of an atom is decreasing. That is, hence we can tell that anion is comparatively smaller in size than a cation. Because cation, if you look at lithium, it tends to lose one electron. That means it is having two orbitals and it has lost one electron. Therefore, its outer orbital is free. So cation is bigger in size. But the francium, it takes in one more electron. Sorry, fluorine takes one more electron and it becomes tightly packed. Hence, this is smaller in size. Anion is smaller in size. Cation is larger in size. So next we'll discuss about the radioactive decay. Radioactive decay, as we know, there are atoms. Suppose let us take carbon atom. And this carbon is having known three isotopes, that is C12, C13 and C14. Over here, as we know that the protons are constant, same, but the neutrons are varying. So in this case it is 6 neutrons, in C13 it is 7 neutrons, in C14 it's 8 neutrons, 6, 7 and 8 neutrons. Because of the change in the neutrons, it so happens that the nucleus of the atom becomes unstable, and when it becomes unstable, it tends to undergo radioactive decay. So radioactive decay will release alpha particle, beta particle, or it will release electromagnetic radiation, that is gamma rays. So we see that in alpha particle there is an emission of 2 protons plus 2 neutrons, that is almost equivalent to a helium atom. Now suppose if you are having carbon and carbon's atomic number is 6. So it is emitting 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Over here it means it is having 2 protons. It will turn to beryllium, and beryllium is having 4 protons. So it will turn to beryllium plus helium is emitted out. So that is how whichever element you are considering, it will go down by 2 units, 2 protons. Next, coming to beta particle, you have 2 types of beta emissions. One is the beta negative or beta minus emission, and the other one is beta plus emission. In beta minus emission, what happens is an antineutrino and an electron is emitted out. And in this process, one neutron turns out to proton. So if suppose there are 6 protons and 8 neutrons, it turns into 7 protons plus 7 neutrons, and one antineutrino plus 1 electron is emitted out. And in the beta positive decay, suppose there are 7 protons and 5 neutrons. Proton converts into a neutron. So now it turns into 5 protons. Sorry, 6 protons and 6 neutrons, plus you have a neutrino and a positive charge. So over here you see that neutrino and a positive charge is emitted out, and here the counterpart of neutrino, that is antineutrino, and electron is emitted out. Next, coming to gamma ray. So gamma ray, it is just the emission of the electromagnetic radiation, and it is very high energy. Next, there are other two types of emissions, that is proton emission and neutron emission. So proton emission is the emission of nuclei of hydrogen atom. So we see that the hydrogen atom is having one proton plus 0 neutron. So when this emission happens, that is single proton emission, is referred to as proton emission. That is also called as hydrogen atom. And next, neutron is particle with a mass approximately equal to that of a proton but with no charge. We know that in the previous slide we have studied that neutron and proton are having similar mass, but neutron has no charge, 0 charge. Hence the emission of a neutron is a neutron, emission of proton is a proton, and beta minus and beta plus are decays. Alpha decay is a helium decay, and then we have the gamma decay. Now we know that atoms tend to bond with each other. So there is chemical bonding which is happening. Atoms, either molecules or even elements, they tend to form chemical bonds. And to explain the formation of chemical bonds, scientists have come up with many theories. And out of them, the most accepted and used is the Vesper theory, that is valence-shell electron pair repulsion theory. So which will generally predict a 3D molecular geometry of an molecule based on how the repulsion is happening, and it will predict a geometrical structure which will give the minimal repulsion between the elements. So one is Vesper theory, the other one is molecular orbital theory, valence bond theory, and we also have the Lewis dot structure, which will explain how an atom tries to bind with another atom to obtain an octet configuration. So these structures, in these structures we look at this bent structure. If we look at this as a water molecule, it is hydrogen on the either sides and oxygen 1, 2, 3, 4. So over here we see that there are 2 lone pairs and 2 bonded pairs. To minimize the repulsion between these pairs, the bent configuration is obtained or taken by the water molecule with an angle of 104.5 degrees. And if the repulsion wasn't this much, if there was no absence of one lone pair, then it would have taken 120 degrees. Example is BF3. And then we also look at the carbon dioxide structure. It is 180 degrees and it is linear in shape. So with this, I'll conclude the first video. Please do subscribe and like the video for more upcoming videos. Thank you.